What's good with y'all's Face the Real? I said I wanted to hop on camera and talk on, just basically talk about something very serious. In this video, I'm just going to describe, how I lost my virginity when I was 8 years old, the events leading up to that, the kind of boy I was. I make it very graphic about the intercourse encounter, and then I'm gonna actually explain the different ways that it affected me as I grew into a grown man. And it still affects me to this day, even though I have been through therapy specifically for this. Now, the first thing I want to get off my chest is that, as society, we are head over heels protecting little girls. And I believe that should not change. But the thing is, when a little boy is put in the same situation as a little girl being taken advantage of, usually a lot of people, online and offline, family, friends, associates, they'll be like, oh, you was lucky. That's good. You the man and all that. It's not a good thing. I don't understand why it's so celebrated. But going back to like how I was as a young boy, before I lost my virginity. Before I lost my virginity, I was very quiet, very reserved, which I still am to this day. I was a bookworm. I pretty much obeyed my grandparents, what they had to say. I played the game, I ran around in the yard, just little kid stuff, you feel me? I was kind of sheltered as well, so this isn't their fault. That's why you have to pretty much always pay attention to who your kids are around. Don't be bringing random people around. I don't care if they're family, close friends, just don't do it, because a lot of people have ulterior motives and are groomers. So fast forward to that fall when I was 8. I got a new babysitter. She was 14 or 15 and I was 8. Sorry, I just started thinking about stuff. But anyway, she was a teenager, and she was cool. I liked her as a person, but back then I didn't really have any adverse opinions about people. I was pretty much I was a little boy. Like I had 11 grandparents, a great mom. I had a good support system, so there was no need for me to be negative or have negative feelings to people. So when I met her, she pretty much passed, my grandparents' check, and I just pretty much embraced her. I didn't really ask questions at all. And the first few times, all we did when she watched me on like the weekends, the first few times, we played the game together. We watched different shows together. We were just chilling. But then one day, after like that 4th or 5th time she was babysitting me, we were playing Diddy Kong Racing. And after I beat her in a race, because I'm always been great at games, she put the controller down and she put my controller down. She looked me in the eye and said, do you want to play another game? And at that point, I'm not even sure what she means, because at that point I had an N64. I have a lot of games, probably had like 6 to 8 games, and I don't even think I had a PlayStation at that point. Might have got it that Christmas that same year. So I was like, sure, we can play a game. I'm thinking, I'm not even knowing what's in store. She automatically gives me a kiss on the lips, and it was a long kiss. I had never been kissed on the lips before in my recollection. And then she started massaging me, downstairs. And, I had never felt that sensation before. So, but I enjoyed it. So I'm thinking this is just normal. I didn't really have any qualms with it. So she ended up taking off my pants and she ended up taking off her pants, and she put my hand down, down below downstairs, had me massage it, like got in my hand and everything. And then she took off her top, and then she put my face into her chest, and then she told me to lick it. So that's just what I did or whatever. She started like moaning a little bit. And at that point I ain't got no pants on, so she takes off my shirt. Now I'm just like, shorts and whitey tighties. And now at this point I'm naked, she's naked. So she sits me down and she straddles on top of me and starts kissing me, and then she inserts me inside of herself, and then she starts doing what she did. And it was like a whole bunch of electrolytes, or however, is that the right word? It was like I'll just say sensation. It was like a different kind of sensation that I really, really, really liked. And she laid back, and then she pulled me into her. She taught me how to like thrust and all that. And I don't really remember if I actually, came or not, because I might just get to that later. But, so when we got done doing what we was doing, we both got dressed, and she looked at me and said, she kissed me, and then she looked at me and said, "Did you like this game?" And I said, "Yeah, I really did." And she said, "Well, please don't tell your grandparents about this, because if you tell them, we're not going to be able to play this game. It's kind of a naughty game." And when she said that, like, I was just like, okay, like, I'm just thinking about how I felt. So, this went on for several months, and then one day, I don't know what my grandparents were doing, that weekend, but one day she just stopped babysitting me. And I remember asking my grandparents, like, what happened to such and such? I don't want to say her name or whatever. So, and they said like they didn't need her anymore because they're not doing. I forgot what they were doing. I really did. I think it had something to do with the church or something, because I went to church on Sundays, but sometimes they went during the weekend. I can't really remember. Could be completely wrong, but only thing I know is for like every Saturday, sometimes Fridays, they would be gone and I would be with her. So when she disappeared, like, I felt very sad. I felt like I had lost a genuine friend, and on top of that, like, I didn't have that kind of release anymore. So when I got to that point, like, for anybody that grew up in the 90s, you remember like cable had like Nickelodeon on like channel 22, and then the movie channels were, I think, like HBO, the movie channel, and Cinemax were like 18 through 21. So on those movies, they would have like different like softcore shows where you didn't really see a lot. Like, you saw like their privates, but you didn't really see them actually inserting it. And then they had other shows where people were just walking around basically nude, and then at the end they would have like these different, I don't know if I can say the word, but it was like a huge gathering of people, doing what they do, intercourse or whatever. Some, y'all know what I'm talking about. I can't say the word. So I was like, start watching that content, and around that time, like, we started having dial-up internet as well, and I was a little spoiled. I stayed across the street from the library, so I got like a lot of time on the internet, but obviously they had blockers at the library, so I couldn't access certain material. At home, I was given like an hour of computer access, and I will be honest, like, my grandparents, they did their best. They didn't announce when they was coming in the room. They pretty much tried to monitor what I was consuming all the time. It's just, I was very good at technology, way better than they was, even at a young age. So for instance, like the movie channels, I would hear them coming, and then I would literally hit the last button and it would go to a cartoon. or go to a lighthearted show. So then they would walk in and see, oh, well, you're just watching that, So, and then with the whole dial-up, they didn't know how to access like web history and all that, but I knew how to clear it anyway at that young age. So even if they did, they wouldn't have found anything. So this is for everybody being like, oh, you didn't have any guidance. They loved me. My mom did as well. It's just, I was very sneaky. I was very, and it wasn't even like being malicious. It was just, I knew I was supposed to be watching this because my mom would like cover up my eyes during like certain scenes. So it was all about me wanting to see it, but didn't want to, get in trouble. So I say that to say this, with the dial-up, I had like an hour of internet access, even though it was slow. Keep in mind, I'm in grade school, so, I became like a fan of Pokemon. And I remember like there was like a pop-up that happened of Pikachu having intercourse with one of the characters. So that opened up a whole another rabbit hole of me just watching animated intercourse. This went on for years and years and years undetected. I think it affected me in school mentally because I started seeing not women. Well, yeah, even like some teachers. I started like actually looking more into them to the point where I would like be fantasizing them being naked, just being honest. But I was never like a pervert. I didn't like, because I was still shy. That's the thing too. I was very shy, very quiet, but my mind was just going through the motions of dealing with this situation at hand. So that's how like I pretty much got addicted to corn, and I still struggle with that. Unfortunately, I'm doing a lot better, but it's literally one of, I've kicked I kicked alcohol addiction. I almost got addicted to that. I kicked it. Marijuana, I kicked that. Different things that I got addicted to throughout the life. Like I never really felt it, but corn is like just a whole nother beast entirely. It's very difficult to give up. And I know you people probably be watching it, dang, you be playing with yourself like, no, it's not even like that. And I have to explain the sickness. The sickness is that I didn't even have to engage in touching myself. I just like watching the whole thing unfold. I found it very fascinating. So that's pretty much what it was. A lot of the time when I watched it, I would just be watching. Like I just liked it. I like seeing the human body. I always loved women. I loved women, how they look, the curves and all that. It just started at a very young age. So I've established how I was moving from, I want to say 8 to 14. Now let's get to the point when I lost my virginity at age 15. So at this point, I'm like a connoisseur of corn, if you will. Even back then, I didn't really think it was like a very real thing because I thought everything that I saw on TV was fake. I'm just being honest. I didn't think, unless it was like on the news, I didn't think it was real. I thought everything was fake. So I never really articulated corn into like real intercourse. So I have to clear that up as well. I know some people, fall into that loop of chasing, trying to reenact the scene that they saw. I never was like that. I never was like that. Now I did learn, certain things from corn, different, how can I say this? Different ways to pleasure a woman. Like I kept seeing what really clicked up my head was that not every woman can be pleased in the same way. Just because you was able to please that woman doesn't mean that the next woman will be able to be pleased in that same way. Everybody's different. I'm different. The dude after me, my ex's dated, he's different. All the women I dated, like they weren't, or had intercourse with, they weren't like similar. That everybody got their own different ways of getting there, without going into detail. So I lost my virginity at age 15 at a get-together, a little Latina chick. And, I'll be honest with you, I went like probably like 15 minutes, man. Like And when I got done, she didn't believe that I was a virgin. And she actually got offended because I had literally told her this is my first time or whatever. So I guess she was expecting me to just, you know, bust right away, but I didn't. And you know, that's another thing as well. I want to say majority of the women that I had intercourse with from the age of 15 through 21, I didn't really, you know, bust like that. And it caused issues because women are very sensitive creatures, especially like in that way. Like if they feel like they're tired or they've had enough for whatever reason, and you haven't, you know, climax, they think that there's something wrong with them. So that I ran into issues with that. But also there was something else that, you know, it was probably like around 19 when I started actually being more open about, you know, me losing my virginity at a young age. And this is the sick part. Most people, including my ex-girlfriends that I shared, you know, because I started at 19, but I kind of like stopped sharing it around like 24 or something like that. I'm in my mid 30s in case y'all can't tell, whatever. I know I don't look super young or whatever, just not ashamed of my age is what it is. So I stopped sharing because most people, they acted like it wasn't a big deal, or some people acted like, oh man, you're the man, like, oh my God, like you always got women, like, oh my God. So when you're in like that environment, because I had trauma, I didn't know I had trauma, and I'm gonna get to how the trauma got to me. So, and I apologize if y'all hear the AC is very hot. I'm in my car, so apologize. So when you're in like that kind of environment where you're like sharing what you've been through and you feel like you don't know for sure if it's bad or good because you was a minor when you did certain things. And as a man, when people be like, oh, you're the man, like, oh, like I wish that was me, like what the, like, oh my God, you got lucky with your babysitter, like, you know. So when you're getting constant feedback like that, you don't think that you have a problem. But the issue was that I was so hypersexualized that in my early relationships, I want to say, yeah, in that time period I started actually seriously dating, you know, at age 19, you know, 24, those girlfriends or whatever, like I have to apologize to them if they see this, because I was so hypersexualized that I put the act of intercourse over the relationship. And what I mean is that if my woman didn't want to have intercourse with me, I took it as she didn't love me. You know, I took it as she didn't like me. I took it as I did something wrong, like I'm on punishment, you know. And that's a very unhealthy way to think. But as I said, because everybody was basically telling me I was the man and all that, I didn't think that there was a problem of me being hypersexualized because I thought it was normal. I thought everybody was watching porn, you know, before they went to sleep, sometime when they woke up, sometimes during their breaks at work, you know. I thought everybody was doing that. So I didn't see anything wrong with it. It took a lot of reflecting of my past relationships for me to actually sit down and think like, okay, you're the common denominator in all these things. Like, what went wrong? So then I started thinking about, you love intercourse way too much. Way too much. Because it was to the point where I had 2 monitors and I'm taking that back. I didn't have 2 monitors. I had a laptop and I had my main TV where I would game on. It got to the point where I would be playing corn on the laptop, you know, for like background noise or whatever, but I'm sitting there playing Street Fighter. I'm sitting there playing Resistance Fall of Man, you know, just like any game really, you know. And as I said, you don't know that you have a problem because, you know, at that point, I thought everybody, you know, was doing this. So it took me one day opened up to one of my therapists. You know, her name was Mariah. You know, very great woman. I hope she's doing well. I haven't talked to her in a while because, you know, our time ran out or whatever. It was very weird. But you know, opened up to her about it, and you know, she was like one of the first people that told me, like, okay, you're dealing with immense trauma. You know, you lost your virginity at age 8 and you have been hypersexualized on 10 ever since. And when she said that, I'm like, it kind of blew my mind because she's the first one that actually said that I had an issue. So I started actually being more open to my feelings and my different schedule. Basically everything I'm saying in this video, I was very open, but just more detailed. This video is 20 minutes. So like I was in therapy just for that one thing for like 3-4 years of me actually, you know, breaking down all the walls. Because that's another thing too, like I never really liked therapy. I'm in therapy now, a lot of things going on, but I never really liked therapy from a young age because I had like a bad experience with a therapist to the point where I felt like they weren't listening, and I just didn't want to open up to somebody like that was a stranger that just seemed uninterested in what I was, you know, uninterested in me. So that's another thing too, like that's why it took me to like my late 20s to actually grasp this. And I still struggle, you know, with corner. It's not as bad, but it's still there. You know, I pray, you know, I try to do everything that I can. But yeah, it's just like the worst thing you could say to a man that lost his virginity before he even knew what virginity was because I don't even tell people I lost my virginity at 8 anymore, you know, because they always be so, oh my God, like, oh, you always, I'm tired of hearing that. So I claim that I lost it at 15. You know, I get like the similar reactions, but it's just something that triggers me when people tell me that, oh, you're the man. Like, I can't believe you always got with me even at age 8. Oh my God. You know, I hate hearing that. So I don't even really share that anymore. But, you know, that's like the worst thing you could say because, you know, if I wasn't so reserved and shy, and I was that hypersexualized, I could have actually caught a charge, you know, because I could have been running around touching little girls, you know, when I was a little boy. I ain't saying it's a grown man, but when I was a little boy, I could have been running around, you know, touching girls or whatever. I could have grew up to be, you know, a serial R word, you know. It's just so many different avenues I could have went down on, but, you know, thankfully I didn't. You know, I never really got to the point where, you know, I just wanted to take it because I always felt like that was wrong. And I feel like those people are scum in general because why would you do that? You know, so yeah, like I really cannot stand society that just bigs up, you know, men losing their virginity as young boys because that can really, it screws with your mind. And then you're surrounded by people that just be like, oh, well, this is natural. Like, oh my God, like, oh, you're ahead of the game, you know. But then on the other side of the foot, if I was a little girl, 8-year-old girl, and my male babysitter had intercourse with me, 14, 15, y'all would have probably been trying to throw him into juvie and then into prison. We gotta have the same energy for little boys, like for real. Because I think that's why a lot of men are messed up mentally when it comes to, you know, women in general. And I'm not saying, you know, hateful or, you know, all that. I'm saying like not knowing how to distinguish between just, you know, the act of intercourse and actually genuinely caring and loving somebody. It really messes you up long term. I wish more people understood that and stop bigging up little boy. Like it makes my stomach turn when I see that. Like it, you know, part of the reason why I don't like social media, because every time I see one of those posts, it's flooded with men and women talking about, oh, well, like, say, like, a teacher takes advantage of a middle school boy or a high school boy. Really, they're minors. The comments will be flooded with, oh my God, like, why, like, did he tell? Like, why would he tell? Like, I wish that was me. Where were these teachers? You're sick. You sick. And I really hate that mentality. And I'm not really a hateful person. Yeah, my environment or whatever, like, causes me to not like a lot of people around here for other reasons. But at my core, I'm not a hateful person. I like to, spread positivity and kindness. But it's just, the world's sick, man. And like, the thing is, like, boys, I'm not a boy anymore, but I'm saying, like, the male gender is just not protected in this world. Little boys can just get treated any kind of way, and there's hardly any consequences. Or it's people like being like, trying to guilt trip. I saw somebody trying to guilt trip a high school boy because the teacher got caught, and they was just like, oh, why you tell on her? Like, what do you mean, why you tell on her? It's just really sick, man. Like, so that's pretty much all I have to really say on the matter, really. That's the gist of it. Like I said, I'm in therapy, but it's for a lot of other reasons that I go through, but that really does put you over the edge mentally, because it causes you to be so unstable, and everybody's different. Like I said, I could have went down a dark path. I could have been out here just taking it, because it's an addiction as well. There was times when I couldn't even get none for whatever reason, because let's be honest, like, despite me look at me, I ain't a bad looking dude, but not everybody can actually get the glorious inners. Not everybody can get it, unfortunately. But so, like, I think that's where, like, a lot of dudes, they have that addiction. They just have to feed it, and it comes from them losing their virginity at such a young age, and then everybody saying nothing's wrong. Something is definitely wrong, and y'all should be, everybody that big that, y'all should be ashamed. But yeah, I'm up out of here, y'all. I've been in this parking lot for, like, I should have been on. Like, I started filming this right when I got in the car. I'm trying to go get something to eat. I ain't ate yet. But yeah, y'all be safe out there, and I'm gonna leave with this. Parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, guardians, screen whoever is watching your kids. Not even just watching, like, just being around them. Always make sure they're not talking to an adult or a teenager by themselves. Make sure that they're not getting comfortable with, these people, because that's what happened to me. I got comfortable with her, and I'm thinking, like, she's my friend and all that there, and she ends up taking my virginity, and she manipulated me in a way where, don't tell nobody, because then we ain't gonna be able to play this no more. So yeah, just watch your kids, for real. Protect them. They're the future. When we're long gone from now, they gonna be running the world, and their offspring is gonna be coming up. You don't want the next generation after us to be just so messed up and out of it, dealing with all these different demons that can't be quelled. But society just seemed like they, it is whatever when it comes to little boys being, actually losing their virginity under 10, So yeah, I'm rambling now. I appreciate everybody, that watched the video. If you stayed this long, please sub to the channel. Let me know what you think about me being on camera. I don't really like being on camera. I never have. It has nothing to do with, like, self-esteem. It's just, when I was in first grade, it got ruined. I remember I was a very serious boy at, like, 6 years old. I didn't actually start coming out my shell till I was 8. Ironically, a lot of things happened at 8. But I was very serious, and I couldn't, gather social cues, and this guy, he was just, yeah, like a sock puppet trying to make me laugh and all that. I was just looking at him like, and after like 5 minutes of me just staring at him, he finally just takes the picture. And then in that moment, in my head, being on camera, just because I never really saw the appeal of somebody whip out a camera and then they expect you to do all this and smile. And like, I never, you know, if I don't feel like smiling, I'm not. I don't feel like striking a pose, I'm not. So it just always seemed like it was inauthentic. Yeah, pictures are great. I still take them, but I never really cared, and especially like on camera, I never really cared to. But like I said, let me know if you really rock with this video. Show us some love, drop some likes, sub to the channel. I will most likely be streaming Bloodborne this weekend. I don't know how long the streams will take. I can pretty much one-shot a lot of the bosses, but I just want to play some on screen. I was going to do RE9, but I'm kind of burnt out on like Resident Evil. I played that all last year. It's my favorite series. So, you know, I'm still going to do the review on that. It's like halfway written. You know, I just got to record the game because I never recorded it, and then, you know, put the commentary and all that. Also, you know, with the whole battle rap thing, like, I love battle rap. It's just a lot of fugazi stuff going on that just turned me off from it. You know, as y'all know, my Mount Rushmore is Murder Mook, Hitman, Arsenal, and my favorite battle rapper of all time, Hollow the Don. That video's been a work in progress for like a few months, but every time I sit down and actually think about it, something fugazi happens in the culture, and I get turned off even more, you know, like. So I apologize to everybody that sub too. I still like battle rap. It's just, I don't know what they doing with it, man. It's just very, but yeah, I'm dragging this. I know probably like the third time I said it. I don't even know how to really get off this camera. So I'm just going to say, I'll let y'all, man. Y'all be safe out there for real. Crazy world. And remember, keep your head up. Everybody got a bad opinion of you. They don't even know you. Just ignore them. You know, they sick themselves and bored. It is what it is. Much love, y'all. Face signing out.